Hey guys, Quintus here. I wanted to discuss the Werewolf timer. And by timer, I mean the amount of time you can stay in werewolf form once you pop the ultimate. The tooltip says that you have 30 seconds, but it is pretty much always more than that, usually significantly more than that. With luck and positioning situations, you might be able to stay in werewolf for hours. But how do we do that? Let's start off with the basics. There are 4 abilities in the whole game that will allow you to extend your werewolf timer. There's 1 active and 3 passive abilities. And as we're going to see, they kind of tie into each other with one of the passives specifically. But let's start simple. Let's start with the active ability. There's a morph of Pounce called Feral Pounce, which isn't used a whole heck of a lot, but if you need extra werewolf timer, especially for newer werewolves, it is nice to have. How it works is the Pounce allows you to pounce in on a target, and then you can activate it a second time to put a bleed on your target. Anytime this ability deals damage with either part of it, it gives you a second duration on your werewolf timer. So it may not fill up your bar to full, but it will probably at least keep you breaking even in and of itself. But that's going to bring me to the second ability I want to talk about because it relates to bleeds and doing damage, which is Blood Rage. When you're in werewolf form, when you deal damage, the duration of your werewolf timer is increased by 4 seconds. This effect can only happen once every 5 seconds. So that sounds like, hey, you're always netting a 1-second loss regardless of what you're doing. And that's not exactly the case. As a matter of fact, it's never the case. And I'm going to explain more on why that is here in a second. Now, this procs on any damage that you do, and you would be right in guessing that the more consistently you can hit with this, the longer your form will stay up. And this is where dots come into play. Your Feral Pounce on somebody and it causes them to bleed for 10 seconds. Then every time that does damage and Blood Rage is up, it will then net you an additional 4 seconds. Any bleeds that you do, whether it be Berserker Bleed, anything else like that, will proc your Blood Rage to give you more duration. So longer duration bleeds are fantastic for this to make it so you don't have to be consistently punching somebody to continually get that timer. Next passive we're going to talk about is Devour. Allows you to devour corpses. This is a lot like a Necro thing. You know, whenever, I don't know if for those of you that have played a Necro, whenever you kill something or one of your abilities expires, it puts a corpse on the ground that you can activate abilities with. This is kind of like that. You can run up to a corpse, activate your synergy, and whenever you do that, you start devouring it, and you can eat it for up to 4 seconds. It's important note here, if you stop devouring a corpse, you cannot return to that corpse. You can only eat a corpse 1 time, regardless of how long you spend eating it. You can never go back and get seconds. So it's one nibble per corpse. But that nibble can last up to 4 seconds if you don't do anything else or you're not interrupted. And every second that you spend devouring will restore 8% of your max health. But more importantly, because we're talking about timer, it will restore about 3 seconds of your werewolf timer for each second you devour it for about 12 seconds base time. Also, when you're devouring, your werewolf timer does not deplete. So essentially, the 4 seconds you spend devouring could almost count as timer as well because the timer is paused and you're gaining 3 seconds every second anyway. Devour is how you're going to get big bursts of your timer back, because if the base amount is 30 seconds and you can devour a corpse and get 12 seconds, I mean, that's a good chunk of timer for your overall time. One final thing on Devour, you can eat players, you can eat NPCs, anything like that. It doesn't matter if they're biological, mechanical, it does not matter. The only exception to this is if they die with a effect that turns them to ash, like some of the fire effects will, something like that, you will not be able to eat that corpse. So if they die with any of those special effects, it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough to be annoying, so just keep that in mind. And that's going to bring us around to the passive that makes everything more complicated to explain, because the math on it is interesting. So here's how it reads. It says, reduce the cost of remaining in your werewolf transformation by 20% for each transformed werewolf or direwolf in your group, including yourself, up to a maximum of 80%. This is confusing for most new players because the number of people that I have met that start playing Werewolf and go, well, this just increases my duration by 80%. No. At maximum, it increases your duration 5 times. Let me explain how. Essentially, whenever your timer is ticking down, every second that it would normally cost, if it costs 20% less, costs an eighth, or not eighth, 0.8 of a second. So the 30 seconds becomes approximately 37.5 seconds worth of timer, including yourself. So that means that realistically, as long as you have your passives as Werewolf, you will never get base value for your timer. You will always get at least a little bit better than that. So, you know what? This is getting a little complicated. There's a lot to process here. So, you know what? You can take the Eve player out of Eve, but you can't take the Eve out of the Eve player. Let's do this right with a spreadsheet. See, I'd apologize, but I'm definitely not sorry. So this is a chart to show you exactly how many seconds you get for the various ways that you can extend your Werewolf timer in relation to the Call of the Pack passive. So again, it reduces it by 20% for every other Werewolf or Direwolf in your group. Direwolves are gained if you are a pack leader. You get 2 of them if you are a pack leader in your party. So if it counts yourself plus your dire wolves, just being solo as a pack leader counts as 3 wolves. And even if you're just a solo berserker, you still count as 1 wolf. So you're never getting that base value that you start with. You always get at least that 1 wolf value on everything. So looking at this chart here, you can see your base 30 seconds of transformation duration as a single wolf becomes 37.5. How that's calculated is that for every second that you would spend out of that 30 seconds becomes 0.8 seconds. For 2 wolves, it becomes 0.6 seconds. For 3 wolves, it becomes 0.4. And for 4 wolves, it becomes 0.2. 0.2 for 4 wolves means in order to equal a single second, you'd have to go 5 seconds. It's confusing the way they worded it. I wish they would have worded it a little bit better. So I've just tried to do the math here to make it a little bit easier for you to process. So with 4 wolves, you get 150 seconds in Werewolf timer, just flat base. If you don't do anything else, if you don't do any damage or anything, you get 150 seconds. Additionally, every second or every single time your Farrah Pounce does damage, either with the initial pounce or the bleed, you, at maximum 4 wolves, you can see get 5 seconds each. Your Blood Rage gains 4 seconds base every 5 seconds, but as you can see, the more wolves you have, the more efficient that is. At 4 wolves, every single time your Blood Rage procs, you're getting effectively 20 seconds worth of time, and it still procs every 5 seconds. This is the primary way you're going to continue to gain timer while you're fighting. And then Devour, you normally get 3 seconds per second, for a total of 12 seconds because you get 4 seconds of devouring. But if you have 4 wolves with you, as you can see going across, you get 60 seconds. Every time you devour a corpse, you get a full another minute in werewolf form. And then everything in between. If you're a pack leader, you get the 3 wolves. If you're by yourself, the 3 wolves values on everything. If you're 2 berserkers together, you get the 2 wolves values. But generally, if you're a pack leader, or in a group with any amount of wolves, you're almost always going to get the maximum duration. Where this becomes really important is if you are playing a solo berserker, it becomes a lot harder to manage. And if you're just a solo pack leader, it kind of gives you an idea for how good those values are. Literally every one of your timers doubles if you can go from being a solo pack leader to having 1 other werewolf with you, whether it be a berserker or whatever. Your timers on everything, values, everything doubles at 4 wolves from 3 because of how it works. So yeah, I hope that was not as confusing as I'm sure it is. But yeah, if you have any questions about how any of this works, if you have any comments about it or anything, or if you think that I did my math wrong here, please let me know. And as always, Keep hunting.